Hello and welcome to the third episode of Self-Stoic, Emotions. In modern days, the word stoic is synonymous with having a poker face and no emotions. This, however, is a gross misrepresentation of what the philosophy of Stoicism is actually about. Stoicism views emotions as the mind's automatic responses to an impression or a value judgment that we make. Value judgments are not always our conscious decision. Sometimes they form instinctively, such as an instant of fear at seeing a jump scare in a horror movie, or a leap of panic each time lightning flashes during a thunderstorm. The Stoics considered these impressions, and consequently the emotions and actions that follow them, all of which are described as pre-passions, as undesirable. In fact, not only are they considered natural, they are acknowledged to be impossible to avoid. For as Seneca observed,
"When the signal for battle is given, the knees of the boldest soldier shake for a moment. The heart even of a great general leaps into his mouth just before the line clashes together, and the hands and feet even of the most eloquent orator grow stiff and cold while he is preparing to begin his speech."
as you can see, pre-passions are a quite innate part of being a human being, the product of millions of years of biology. They help motivate us to act, communicate our feelings, and serve as indicators for our well-being. And without these intuitive senses, such as that of self-preservation, we might not be able to react quickly enough in dire situations. While we cannot avoid our emotional predispositions, which Stoicism recognizes, it does not mean that we have to assent to them. Assenting refers to the conscious choice of giving a value judgment, specifically the judgment of good, to something. Recall that, according to the Stoics, things only have the potential to be good, or bad in a matter, if they are under our direct control. All that has moral value, in other words, must be of our own doing. Essentially, this area which we can control boils down to how we choose to think and act. When we encounter things or events outside of our control, then it is our own reaction to them that can be good or bad. The things, in and of themselves, have no inherent value. Pre-passions, being the product of our subconsciousness, are under this category of neutral or indifferent things. To Stoicism, it is not that we should try to control indifference, but how we choose to perceive and address them. In fact, Epictetus thought the latter could reign supreme over the former.
It is not things that upset us, but our judgment about those things.
With every pre-passion we experience, there is a compulsion to act in a certain way. Fear urges us to flee danger, anger to lash out, and sometimes, such as in the case of sorrow, to give up on living. The reason behind this, the Stoics thought, are the value judgments we often give unconsciously to these emotions as they arise, such as deeming the rage we feel as fitting or the panic we feel as beneficial. However, although these subconscious judgments can give insights about ourselves and our environments, they can be biased and distorted as well, as, at their core, pre-passions are primal intuitions, gut instincts to help us survive, build relationships, and reproduce. We can see demonstrations of this in psychological phenomena such as the availability bias, the in-group bias, self-serving bias, or the halo effect. All of these cognitive heuristics or biases help us act quickly or put our social and physical well-being first. To Stoicism, these goals do not always fit with, nor should they take over the importance of acting with, reason, of acting in a way that promotes our mental well-being. Consequently, it is unreasonable when we immediately approve of the value judgments that accompany our pre-passions, without thought. The Stoics referred to this faulty or mistaken perception as passion, or a natural emotion that has been able to overwhelm our ability to reason correctly. As opposed to pre-passions, passions are considered undesirable and what the Stoics believed we ought to overcome. Seneca distinguished between the two as follows.
None of these things which casually influence the mind deserve to be called passions. These are merely impulses of the body. The mind, if I may so express it, rather suffers passions to act upon itself than forms them. A passion, therefore, consists not in being affected by the sights which are presented to us, but in giving way to our feelings and following up these chance promptings.
When we assent to whatever our impulses tell us, instead of being prudent and using our reason, which we have the power to wield, we are like non-thinking animals that, in the words of Epictetus,
like an ape, you mimic all you see, and one thing after another is sure to please you, but is out of favor as soon as it becomes familiar. For you have never entered upon anything considerately, nor after having viewed the whole matter on all sides or made any scrutiny into it, but rashly.
On the other hand, when we make correct value judgments, the emotions that result are both rational and of our own doing, the two qualities of Stoicism's moral good. Some examples are the calmness we feel when perceiving external challenges not as threats, but as indifference, because they cannot affect our character, or the feeling of contentment at knowing that we have tried our best. Stoicism encourages us to examine our pre-passions closely, instead of hastily assenting to them. Being mindful of the judgments we make is important for living a meaningful life, because it is only one of the very few things we can control. There is a space between feeling an impression or emotion and consciously acting upon it. In this space lies the potential to give pause for thoughtfulness and to reflect on what the right course of action really is. For, as Seneca explained,
a man may think himself injured, may wish to avenge his wrongs, and then may be persuaded by some reasons to give up his intention and calm down. I do not call that anger. It is an emotion of the mind which is under the control of reason. Anger is that which goes beyond reason and carries her away with it. It is the subsequent mad rush which not only receives the impression of the apparent injury, but acts upon it as true, proceeding from choice and deliberate resolve.
when emotions become passions, they have effectively overtaken our free will and pull us along at their whims. As Stoics, we want to decide how to live our own lives, rather than leaving that to the hands of impulses. When pre-passions are reflected upon under the light of reason, we often find them, although natural, to be illogical and unfounded. For example, while you are walking on the sidewalk, someone pushes past you. You start to feel the heat rising on your skin, as you wonder with indignation how there are such entitled people in the world, and how unfair it is that they can get away with it. Wanting to give them what they deserve, you curse loudly at them. Is your action an appropriate response to the situation? Stoicism says no, because you do not have full knowledge of the situation. What if the person who pushes past you is racing to the hospital to see their dying loved one last time? What if they only push you out of desperation, and that normally they are some of the kindest people around? After examining the situation more closely, do you still think it is worth it to risk ruining someone's day based on a trivial event and so little information? Seneca reminds us to not so hastily judge for the worst.
Wherever there is a human being, there is an opportunity for kindness.
Furthermore, why should we be upset at something that is out of our control? Doing so would not change anything except make us feel worse. We do not have to let external things rule over our minds and puppeteer us like a husk. As Epictetus remarked,
If a person gave away your body to some passerby, you'd be furious. Yet you hand over your mind to anyone who comes along, so they may abuse you, leaving it disturbed and troubled. Have you no shame in that?
redirect your energy towards something that will have an impact that matters, such as striving to be a more compassionate person. Complaining and dwelling in bitterness are futile and only do us more harm than good. As Seneca, again, noted,
We are more often frightened than hurt. We suffer more in imagination than in reality.
As you can see, we have the power to challenge our instinctive impressions. Stoicism is not about suppressing emotions, rather it is, through the use of reason, about addressing our emotions and not letting them dictate how we choose to act. The Stoic is not unemotional. The Stoic simply rejects judgments based on false logic and a false set of values. We cannot change the inclination to feel, but we can change the way we reason. See these pre-passions for what they are: instincts. They can be of benefit to us, but they can also be of harm. It depends on what we choose to do with them. Realize that your instincts are not everything that you are, but are just a part of you. You are also rational and can think for yourself. Treat instincts as tools, not as our masters.
We may weep, but we must not wail.
Thank you for listening all the way through to the end. Our answer for last episode's question is: everyone's strong and weak virtues differ. We all have different life experiences, and the struggles each individual faces are not always the same. For example, a person who has been comfortable all their life might find courage to be the hardest virtue, while another who frequently indulges in good foods and boozes might grapple with moderation instead. Interestingly, Anders Ericsson's research about expertise has shown that abilities and skills are not innate, but they are created or learned. It stands to reason, therefore, that any virtue can be developed with the right kind of training for a sufficient amount of time. We'd also like to pose another question for you all to discuss in the comments. What kind of passions are you specifically prone to, and why? Being aware of our thought processes can help us better detect their flaws and address them. We hope you'll enjoy the coming episode, and hopefully have learned something new from this one. Have a nice week.